Imagine yourself standing on the deck of an ancient wooden ship. The horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. The water is calm, but beneath the surface lies a world unknown, a world filled with mysteries yet to be uncovered. The ocean, with its vastness, seems peaceful at first glance, yet the more you listen to the sounds of the wind and the creaking wood, the more you sense the eerie presence of something hidden just beyond sight. It is in this space, in the quiet hum of the waves and the open expanse of the sea, that strange stories begin to take shape, stories of serpentine creatures, elusive and vast, whose very existence seems as much a part of legend as it is of reality. Tonight, we will set sail through the ages, from ancient myth to modern reports, exploring the strange and fascinating tales of sea serpents. We will chart a course through the shifting waters of perception and belief, looking beyond the legends to uncover what these creatures, real or imagined, tell us about the human need to understand the deep, unknown world beneath the waves. So close your eyes if you like, and let the gentle rhythm of the ocean guide you through the darkened waters of history. Picture yourself on the deck of a sturdy, wooden ship, sailing across an endless expanse of water. The ship creaks and groans as it moves, its sails billowing in the wind, catching the breeze that has carried it far from shore. The rhythm of the waves beneath you is constant, soft, and hypnotic, a lullaby that could almost make you forget the vast unknown that stretches beyond the ship's railing. There is a gentle rocking as the ship cuts through the water, and a light mist lingers in the air, drifting lazily across the surface of the ocean. The sky above is wide, with only a few scattered clouds. The sun is just beginning its slow descent, casting a warm golden light on the wooden planks underfoot. The ocean, endless and tranquil, shimmers in the fading light, but there is something eerily quiet about it too. No land in sight, only water, so much water that it feels as though it stretches into eternity. With each passing wave, you feel a little further from the world, a little closer to the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface. As you stroll along the deck, you pass the crewmen hardened by the life they've chosen. Their faces are weathered, and their clothes are salt-streaked and tattered, each one carrying the mark of years spent on the open sea. Some are quietly working the ropes, while others stand watch, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of land or something else. The ocean, as peaceful as it seems, is a place full of unknown dangers. The sailors know this well, and yet they are strangely at home with the uncertainty. Life on board is a mixture of routine and vigilance, punctuated by the occasional, quiet moments of wonder. The air smells of salt and seaweed, a sharp scent that lingers in your nostrils. The breeze is cool, brushing against your face, carrying with it the unmistakable taste of the deep ocean. You can hear the soft, rhythmic slapping of the water against the hull, the creaking of the timbers as the ship strains against the swell of the waves. Far in the distance, you hear the occasional cry of a gull, but the silence between those calls is almost oppressive, as if the ocean itself is holding its breath, waiting. Beneath you, the sea is an uncharted wilderness, its depths unexplored, its secrets hidden beneath the surface. You can't help but wonder what lies in the depths, what strange creatures might lurk beneath the gentle ripples of the waves. The ocean is so vast, so unknowable, that the idea of something monstrous or otherworldly seems almost possible. The sailors speak of it in hushed tones, creatures of legend, of myth, whose forms are said to twist and coil beneath the water, unseen but always present. The ship, though sturdy and well-made, feels small and fragile against the vastness of the ocean. The idea of a sea serpent rising from the depths is something that seems both ridiculous and terrifying at once. You glance out at the horizon. There is nothing but water, endless, stretching as far as the eye can see. But in this moment, as you stand on the deck, the sea feels alive. It moves with purpose, each wave a reminder of its power. And in the silence between the waves, You can almost imagine the serpentine creatures that might be out there slithering, winding through the water, their forms just beneath the surface. The crew shares these tales, passed down from one generation of sailors to the next, and though most dismiss them as superstition, there is always the quiet wonder. Could such creatures truly exist? Could something so large and powerful be hidden in the deep, where no man can reach, where the water is so dark that nothing can be seen beyond a few feet beneath the surface? The sailors talk of glimpses of serpentine tails rising from the water, of undulating shapes moving with an unnatural grace. But it's always just a flash, a glimpse, something that disappears as quickly as it appears. Yet the stories persist, each one adding to the mystery of the ocean's depths. As night falls, the sky turns a deep indigo, and the stars begin to appear, scattered across the darkened heavens like tiny diamonds. The moon casts a silvery light across the water, making the ocean look almost ethereal. The sea is still, but you know that it is far from calm. The ship moves forward, cutting through the water with ease, and you can't help but wonder if there is something out there, something watching, just beneath the waves. The thought lingers as the ship sails deeper into the heart of the ocean, leaving the safety of land further and further behind. In this moment, you realize that the ocean, vast and uncharted, is both a place of discovery and a place of fear. It is an open invitation to the unknown, where every ripple could be the signal of something more, something strange. And as the ship continues its course, you can't shake the feeling that there's something just beneath the surface, waiting to rise up from the depths. As we sail deeper into the heart of this great mystery, we find ourselves in the 19th century, a time when the world was rapidly changing, but still, much of it remained unexplored. It is in this age of discovery, of expanding empires and maritime exploration, that a certain event would capture the imagination of the world and reignite the ancient tales of sea serpents. This is the story of the great sea serpent and how it came to be forever etched in history. Imagine yourself, for a moment, standing on the deck of a vessel, much like the ones we spoke of earlier. But now it's the year 1848. The crew of the HMS Daedalus, a British warship, is sailing off the coast of Norway, near the Lofoten Islands. The day begins like any other, with the steady rhythm of the sea and the occasional squawk of the seabird. Yet, this day will not pass like the others. A sight will be seen, something that, for centuries, only existed in myth and superstition. But this time, the story will be different. This time, it will be captured in the public's eye, forever changing the perception of what lies beneath the waves. The crew first notices the creature in the distance. It's not unusual to spot a whale or some other marine mammal from the ship, but this was different. They saw something large, unnaturally large, moving through the water. As they watched, the shape became clearer, rising up from the ocean like some great serpent, its form undulating in a slow, graceful motion. It was reported to be over 100 feet in length, with a series of humps along its back, and a head that seemed to rise and fall like a creature of legend. The officers aboard the Daedalus, including Captain Peter Unruhl, were quick to take note of the sighting. They observed it for several minutes, and reports vary, but most agreed that they were struck by the creature as enormous size and the eerie manner in which it moved. Some said it had a smooth, blackish skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Others described it as being more akin to a serpent, its movements sinuous and undisturbed by the waves around it. This encounter would not remain a private matter, confined to the decks of one ship. The story spread rapidly, as sailors and officers alike spoke of the beast, recounting every detail of their encounter. Soon, the Daedalus returned to port, and Captain Endul, as well as others aboard, published reports of what they had seen. The press, eager for sensational stories, latched onto the tale, and soon the world was fascinated. The creature was dubbed the Great Sea Serpent, and with it came a revival of ancient, myths now given new life through the eyes of respectable sailors and military officers. The discovery of the great sea serpent was no isolated event. In the years that followed, sightings of similar creatures began to surface across the globe, each more curious than the last. From the coasts of New England to the shores of Australia, sailors, fishermen, and explorers began to report sightings of great serpentine creatures in the waters. Each new report seemed to validate the story, as if the creature was not confined to one part of the world but existed, in some form, across the vast oceans. Yet despite the mounting evidence, skepticism remained. While the Daedalus crew was adamant in their claims, and many others came forward with their own accounts, there was still a significant portion of the population that dismissed these sightings as fabrications or misunderstandings. The scientific community, at the time, was not yet ready to accept the existence of such a creature, especially one so outlandish as the sea serpent. Some believed it was simply a giant eel or a large whale, while others insisted that these sightings were the result of too much rum or too little sleep. The 19th century saw the intersection of myth and science, where the old stories of monsters and unknown creatures were being questioned and examined in the light of reason and discovery. Yet, the more the scientific community tried to explain away the creature, the more the stories grew in number and intensity. The great sea serpent, though its true nature would remain a mystery for centuries, became a symbol of the ocean's mystery, a reminder of the vast and unknowable world that lay beneath the surface. And so, the great sea serpent of 1848 continues to hold a special place in the annals of maritime history. It is a symbol of a time when the world was still filled with the unknown, when every ocean voyage carried with it the possibility of encountering the strange and the extraordinary. Even today, the tale of the Daedalus and its great discovery still resonates, reminding us that the ocean is not merely a body of water, but a realm of mystery, full of creatures that may never fully reveal themselves. As we reflect on the discovery of the great sea serpent, we can't help but wonder, did it truly exist, or was it merely a figment of the imagination, brought to life by the deep fears and longings of those who sailed the open sea? Whatever the truth may be, it is undeniable that the legend has captured our collective imagination, and in doing so, has become an indelible part of our history. Now we shift our focus from the rough, salt-sprayed decks of the ship to the drawing rooms and salons of the Victorian elite, where the mystery of sea serpents took on a new dimension. In the late 19th century, as the fascination with these creatures grew, it found a home not only among sailors and explorers, but also among the intellectuals, scientists, and wealthy collectors of Europe and America. Here, the sea serpent became not just a creature of fear, but a symbol of the unknown, a riddle that could, if solved, unlock the secrets of nature itself. In the comfortable parlors of the wealthy, the sea serpent was an exotic curiosity. The upper class, with their interest in science and natural history, had begun to embrace the unknown in ways that were both intellectual and social. Naturalists and explorers returned from their voyages with tales of strange creatures, and the idea of sea serpents seemed to offer a connection to a world that was both primitive and awe-inspiring. These stories, often presented in lecture halls or printed in scientific journals, captivated an audience eager to believe that nature still held mysteries that could defy logic and reason. In many ways, the fascination with sea serpents was part of a broader trend in Victorian society. The period was one of great intellectual ferment, with discoveries in science, biology, and geology shaking the foundations of how people understood the natural world. The theory of evolution, the rise of paleontology, and the study of deep-sea exploration had opened up new realms of thought. For the Victorians, the sea serpent represented the last frontier, the idea that there were still wonders to be uncovered, creatures that had escaped the scrutiny of modern science, lingering in the uncharted waters of the world. As the stories of sea serpents spread, so too did the desire to find concrete evidence. The elite turned their attention to these creatures, eager to be the ones who could prove once and for all that the myths were true. Some Victorian scientists, eager to make their mark in the burgeoning field of marine biology, set out on expeditions to capture or photograph a sea serpent. The idea of discovering one of these legendary creatures became a social pursuit, a way to gain prestige and validation in the eyes of the public. Wealthy patrons sponsored expeditions, funding trips to remote corners of the globe in search of the elusive serpent, while the media sensationalized each new sighting, amplifying the thrill of the hunt. At the same time, the rise of natural history museums and private collections allowed for. At the same time, the rise of natural history museums and private collections allowed for the display of sea serpent artifacts, real or imagined. The wealthy elite began to fill their homes with curiosities from the farthest reaches of the earth, from stuffed animals and preserved plants to fossilized remains of long-extinct creatures. Among these artifacts were the remnants of sea serpent sightings, pieces of evidence that ranged from rudimentary sketches and grainy photographs to the occasional object that was thought to be from a sea serpent, like large, twisted bones or scales. Some of these objects were presented as scientific evidence, displayed with great ceremony in museums or in the private study rooms of the rich and powerful. One such figure was the British naturalist Sir Richard Owen, a prominent figure in the Hawaii scientific community who became fascinated by the sea serpent phenomenon. Owen, known for his work on the fossil record and his role in the development of the Natural History Museum in London, was both a skeptic and a believer. While he carefully examined the evidence, he was also captivated by the possibility that a creature once thought to be a myth could, in fact, exist. For Owen and others like him, the sea serpent became a symbol of the age's quest for understanding and discovery. It was an intellectual challenger question that, if answered, could change the way the world viewed the ocean and the life within it. Despite the growing interest in the sea serpent among the elite, the creature's existence remained as elusive as ever. The scientific community remained divided. Some claimed to have found conclusive proof, while others dismissed the creatures as nothing more than the product of faulty observations and overactive imaginations. As the years passed, sightings continued to be reported, but no tangible evidence emerged to satisfy the demands of rigorous science. For the wealthy collectors and intellectuals, however, the thrill was in the chase itself. The idea of sea serpents, no longer relegated to the folk tales of sailors, had become a part of the cultural landscape. To own a piece of this mystery, whether it was a mounted specimen, a rare account of a sighting, or a specimen believed to be from a sea serpent, was to own a part of the unknown, a fragment of the world's most tantalizing mystery. In a sense, the sea serpent had become more than a creature of the deep. It had become a social and intellectual symbol of a bygone era of a time when the unknown still held sway over the imagination, and when the exploration of the natural world was still a great adventure. As the 20th century dawned, the fascination with sea serpents began to wane. New scientific discoveries, such as the rise of underwater exploration and the growth of marine biology, began to offer more concrete answers about the ocean's mysteries. Yet the sea serpent, like so many myths before it, would never completely fade from our collective consciousness. Today, the sea serpent remains a symbol of the mysteries that still lie just beyond our reach. A reminder that, even in an age of scientific discovery, there are still places in the world where the line between myth and reality is not so easily drawn. As we gently bring our journey to a close, we reflect on the sea serpent, that strange and elusive creature that has captivated our imaginations for centuries. From ancient myths to Victorian fascination, and through the lens of scientific inquiry, the story of the sea serpent is as much about our human desire to understand the unknown as it is about the creatures that may or may not lie beneath the waves. Perhaps the truth of the sea serpent lies not in the discovery of a single creature, but in the mystery itself, the endless fascination with what we cannot see, and the stories that emerge from our need to make sense of the vast and unknown world around us. The ocean, in all its beauty and danger, continues to be a place of wonder, where legends take root and reality intertwines with imagination. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine the peaceful sway of the ocean beneath you, the whispers of ancient stories carried on the wind. The sea serpent may not rise from the depths, but the mystery it leaves behind will remain, quietly drifting through the waters of time, waiting for the next curious soul to come along and try to unlock its secrets. Sleep well, knowing that the mysteries of the deep will always be there, silent, waiting, and just beyond our reach. Imagine yourself standing on the bow of a large wooden ship, the kind used for voyages of exploration, where the horizon stretches endlessly before you, without a single landmark to guide you away. The sky overhead is soft, painted in varying shades of blue and gray, and the sun hangs low in the sky, casting a warm golden light over the sea. The air smells of salt and damp wood, and the gentle creaking of the ship's timbers blends with the soft rush of the waves as they glide past the hull. There's a slight roll to the ship, a rhythm you quickly become accustomed to, like the pulse of the ocean itself. The ship moves steadily, but there's something unsettling about this vast ocean. So much water, so little land, and nowhere to go but forward. Ahead, only more water, and beneath, the dark, impenetrable depths that no one has ever truly charted. In this moment, you begin to understand the feelings of the sailors of centuries past. They knew the ocean was vast, but did they truly understand just how endless it was? You, too, are sailing toward the unknown, unsure if you will reach your destination, or if the world will simply drop off into nothingness, as some ancient maps suggested. These old maps spoke of dragons, sea monsters, and whirlpools, places where the laws of nature seemed to dissolve into myth. There was always the whisper of fear that beyond the horizon, beyond the world they knew, lay dangers so vast and unfathomable that they could tear the very fabric of the earth apart. The stories of sea monsters and the edge of the world were not just warnings. They were real possibilities to these sailors. Imagine that you, too, are among them, just as the men aboard Columbus's ships were in 1492, setting sail into the unknown. The challenge was not only to discover new lands, but to navigate through the myths, the terrifying uncertainties that swirled around them like a storm. Each wave that rises and falls beneath the ship's keel seems to whisper of these ancient fears, of creatures hidden beneath the water's surface, and of a world that is far larger and more dangerous than they can comprehend. Yet, despite the fear, the pursuit of discovery drives them onward, because the possibility of finding something new, something legendary, outweighs the unknown. The quest for adventure, for glory, is like a call that cannot be ignored. As you stand on the deck, surrounded by the vastness of the ocean, you realize that it's not just the discovery of new lands that drives these explorers. It's the very fear of the unknown, the desire to face it head on. Tonight, we embark on this very journey, a journey of exploration, not just of lands, but of the fears and myths that propelled sailors to venture into the great unknown. We'll follow the path of those who believed they were heading toward the world's edge, where ancient maps warned of dragons and monsters. This journey will take us across the seas, into the minds of explorers, and through the stories of the unknown that haunted them. We will experience what life aboard these ships was like, the fears they harbored, and the legends that guided them. As you listen, imagine yourself aboard that ship, standing on the bow with only the stars and the endless sea to guide you away. The unknown ahead is both thrilling and terrifying, and the horizon seems to stretch forever, an infinite expanse that beckons you forward. The life of a sailor during the age of exploration was one of isolation, uncertainty, and constant toil. Imagine yourself aboard a wooden ship in the 15th century. A ship with no modern conveniences, no engines, and no radar to help you navigate. It's just you, the crew, and the sea. The ship creaks underfoot as the wind fills the sails, pushing you steadily forward. The salty smell of the ocean is everywhere, carried on the breeze that sweeps across the deck. The sun beats down during the day, while at night, the chill sets in as the stars twinkle brightly above. There's something peaceful about the rhythm of the waves, the gentle rocking of the ship as it sails through the endless ocean. But beneath that rhythm lies the tension of the unknown. You can't help but feel the isolation, the quiet hum of the ship's timbers, and the occasional distant cry of seabirds. The horizon is a never-ending stretch of blue, and the ocean beneath you is dark, shifting, and mysterious. There are no landmarks, no coastlines to follow, just water and sky. The days stretch on without end, with nothing to do but perform your duties and hope for land. Your meals are simple stale bread, salted meat, and whatever fish the crew can catch, if they're lucky. Below deck, it's cramped, damp, and uncomfortable, with no privacy and little room to move. The hammocks sway gently with the ship, and the air is thick with the smell of salt water and sweat. The work is hard, but it is not the physical labor that wears on the sailors. It is the psychological toll of being so far from home. Imagine yourself walking along the deck, staring out at the endless expanse of water. It's been weeks, maybe months, since you've seen land, and each day feels like a repeat of the last. The isolation weighs on you, and the uncertainty of the journey makes it worse. You know that you are sailing into the unknown, toward the edge of the world, where ancient maps warn of dragons, whirlpools, and sea monsters. The crew is made up of men who are all in the same boat, literally, and yet the fear is palpable. The whispers among the crew grow louder as the days pass. Some say they've seen strange shapes moving beneath the water. Others have heard odd sounds at night, as though the sea itself is speaking to them. The captain tries to keep everyone focused, but even he knows that there's no way to prepare for what lies ahead. Every time the ship crests a wave, there's a sense of unease, as though the very water beneath you could open up and swallow you whole. There's a real fear of falling off the edge of the world, where there's nothing but a void. You've heard the stories, too, of ships that have disappeared into vast, uncharted waters, never to return. And yet, despite the fear, there's a quiet, unspoken understanding among the sailors. The edge of the world is something they must face. It's a fear they all share, but it's also the reason they're here. They are explorers, adventurers, driven by the possibility of discovering something new, something extraordinary. Every night, as you lay in your hammock, you listen to the creak of the ship and the distant sound of the waves, wondering what's out there. Is there really a place where the earth falls away? Could monsters really be lurking just beneath the waves? The fear doesn't stop you, though. It only drives you forward, urging you to sail into the unknown, to see what lies beyond the horizon. Each day is an exercise in endurance. The crew works together, pushing through the hardships and the doubts. There are moments of calm, moments where the sea is still and the sky is clear, and the ship sails smoothly through the water. But those moments are fleeting, and they are always followed by the reminder that you are sailing toward a place where few have ventured. The vastness of the ocean stretches before you, a reminder of the dangers and the promise of discovery. With each passing day, you grow more accustomed to the rhythm of life at sea, but the fear of what lies beyond the horizon never truly leaves. As the days turn into weeks and the weeks into months, you begin to understand why sailors have always feared the edge of the world. It's not just the monsters or the whirlpools. It's the fear of the unknown itself, of venturing into a place where no one has ever been, where the rules of nature may no longer apply. The very thought that the earth could drop off into nothingness is terrifying, but it's also exhilarating. There's a certain courage in the act of sailing into the unknown, of facing the fear. And uncertainty, knowing that you might be the one to discover what lies beyond the edge. Let us now turn to the story of one of the most famous voyages in history, the expedition of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Columbus, a man driven by ambition and the thirst for discovery, set sail from Spain in search of a westward route to Asia. His plan, based on the assumption that the Earth was smaller than it actually is, would not only change the course of history, but would forever alter the understanding of the world as geography. The fear and uncertainty that the sailors faced on this journey were amplified by the fact that no one knew for sure where this westward route would lead. But Columbus was convinced that it would lead to Asia and its vast riches. Imagine yourself on one of Columbus's ships, perhaps the Santa Maria, a large vessel carrying a crew of sailors and soldiers eager to embark on a journey of discovery. The ship is sturdy, though much smaller than modern vessels, and the wooden planks creak underfoot as the ship cuts through the waves. Columbus had promised the royal court of Spain great rewards if the journey succeeded, but there was also the looming possibility of failure, of sailing into the unknown without the assurance of success. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, doubt began to settle in among the sailors. They had been at sea for over a month, with no land in sight, and the fear began to grow. The anxiety of not knowing if they were truly on the right course was a heavy burden. The crew, originally excited for the adventure, started to question their captain's decision, and whispers of mutiny began to spread. The ocean was vast, and the farther they sailed from the familiar shores of Spain, the more unsettling it became. The sky, which had once seemed so full of promise, now felt oppressive, and the endless expanse of water seemed to close in around them. Columbus, ever the leader, kept the crew's spirits up, assuring them that land was just over the horizon. He believed strongly in his maps and his theories, though they were based on the limited knowledge of his time. The belief that Asia could be reached by sailing west was based on the assumption that the Earth was much smaller than it actually is, a misconception that would not be corrected until much later. But Columbus was convinced, and his confidence drove the crew to continue. Then, on October 12, 1492, after more than 2 months at sea, a cry came from the lookout, "Land ho!" After weeks of sailing through the vast, empty ocean, the sight of land was an indescribable relief. But the land Columbus discovered was not the rich islands of Asia he had hoped to find. Instead, it was the islands of the Caribbean, a new world entirely, and Columbus, convinced that he had found islands off the coast of Asia, named the place San Salvador. Columbus's belief that he had reached Asia would persist throughout his life, but the world would soon know that he had discovered a new continent altogether, a place that would change the course of history. The significance of Columbus's journey cannot be overstated. His discovery opened the door for further exploration, leading to the eventual colonization of the Americas and the establishment of trade routes that would shape the world for centuries to come. For the sailors who accompanied him, the journey was one of immense physical and psychological strain, but it was also one of incredible triumph. They had faced the fear of the unknown, the terror of sailing into a place that no one had charted, and emerged victorious, albeit unintentionally in finding a new world. However, the journey was not without its costs. Many of the sailors had not returned to Spain as heroes. They had become weary from the hardships of the journey, and many had lost faith in Columbus's promises of fortune. Yet, the rewards from this discovery, both material and political, would soon outweigh the doubts, and Columbus's legacy would be cemented as one of the most influential figures in the age of exploration. The expedition's impact would echo through history, inspiring countless other explorers to venture into the unknown, furthering the age of discovery and shaping the world's view of the Earth. In reflecting on Columbus's voyage, one cannot ignore the element of fear that accompanied the journey. It was the fear of the unknown that fueled both the hesitation and the determination of the sailors. the same fear that had kept them cautious in the early days of the voyage, as they sailed further and further from the safety of home, also propelled them forward toward an extraordinary discovery. The vast, empty ocean, once a source of terror, became a path leading to a new world, forever altering humanity's understanding of geography, culture, and history. Columbus's voyage marked a pivotal moment in history, not only for the lands he encountered, but for the journey itself. The journey that was driven by a desire to face the unknown, and in doing so, change the course of history forever. As Columbus and his crew sailed farther west into the unknown, they were not only following the sea, but also ancient myths and beliefs about the edge of the world. The concept of the earth having an edge, beyond which nothing existed but monsters and the unknown, was a pervasive belief that held sway for centuries. Early maps, especially those drawn by medieval cartographers, often depicted the farthest reaches of the world with illustrations of terrifying creatures, such as dragons, sea serpents, and giant whirlpools. These monsters were not just fantasies. They were warnings, images drawn to caution sailors against venturing too far into uncharted waters. These mythical creatures and dangers were deeply ingrained in the sailor's psyche, and the idea of the edge of the world wasn't simply a belief, but a real, visceral fear. The sea was seen as an unpredictable force, full of strange and unknowable dangers. Sailors often reported seeing strange shapes moving beneath the waves, or hearing eerie sounds that seemed to come from nowhere. The vast emptiness of the ocean, coupled with these unsettling experiences, only reinforced the belief that there were creatures lurking just beyond the horizon. The sea was both a source of wonder and terror, a place where the laws of nature seemed to dissolve into myth. One of the most enduring of these myths was the Kraken, a gigantic sea creature said to be capable of dragging entire ships and their crews to the depths of the ocean. The Kraken was often described as an enormous octopus or squid with tentacles large enough to capsize a ship. While the idea of such a creature seemed improbable, the stories were grounded in the real experiences of sailors who had encountered massive squid and other marine creatures that could grow to extraordinary sizes. The Kraken, however, was not merely a physical threat. It was a symbol of the unknown dangers that lay beyond the reach of human understanding. Alongside the Kraken were other mythical creatures, such as the sea serpent, a long, snake-like monster that was often depicted as coiling around ships and dragging them into the water. These serpents were said to be huge, powerful, and incredibly fast, making them impossible to escape. While most of these creatures were the stuff of legend, they were not entirely without basis. The sea serpent myth may have been inspired by the real-life sightings of enormous marine animals, such as the oarfish, a long, ribbon-like fish that could grow to more than 30 feet in length. Sailors who saw these creatures in the water, especially when the sea was calm, may have mistaken them for serpents, leading to the proliferation of these stories. In addition to these creatures, ancient maps often depicted whirlpools and other dangerous phenomena at the edge of the known world. These whirlpools were thought to be able to swallow entire ships, pulling them into an endless void beneath the sea. The idea of the world having an edge, where the sea itself became a dangerous and unpredictable force, was an essential part of the sailor's worldview. This mythos was not just a source of fear. It was a way of explaining the vast emptiness of the ocean, a way of giving form to the terror that came with sailing into uncharted waters. Even as science began to challenge these myths, the fear of the unknown persisted. The vastness of the ocean and the mysteries that lay beneath its surface continued to captivate the imagination of sailors and explorers for centuries. The idea that there were still parts of the world that were unknowable, that were filled with monsters and dangers, remained a powerful motivator for exploration. The edge of the world was not just a physical location. It was a psychological boundary that sailors had to face, a place where the familiar laws of nature broke down, and the only way forward was to confront the unknown with courage and hope. As the great voyages of exploration unfolded, the motivations of the explorers and the royal courts that funded their expeditions often came into sharp contrast. While the sailors themselves were driven by a mixture of ambition, curiosity, and the thrill of adventure, the royal courts had more pragmatic concerns, focusing on the potential rewards of exploration, but also deeply aware of the risks involved. These contrasting viewpoints played a significant role in shaping the voyages and their outcomes, as the courts and the explorers themselves navigated not only the seas, but also the political and financial currents of the time. At the heart of these expeditions were individuals like Christopher Columbus, whose ambitions went far beyond simply discovering new lands. Columbus, though deeply invested in the idea of reaching Asia by sailing west, also sought personal glory and financial reward. His proposals to the Spanish monarchy were not just about opening new trade routes. They were about his own potential elevation in status, wealth, and recognition. For Columbus, the belief in a westward passage to Asia was not just a geographic hypothesis, but a path to personal fame and political power. The Spanish monarchy, particularly Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, viewed Columbus's proposal with a combination of skepticism and hope. While they recognized the potential value of a new trade route to Asia, they were also deeply aware of the costs involved in such a risky venture. Columbus was asking for an enormous amount of resources, ships, men, and provisions for an untested and highly speculative plan. To the monarchs, the idea of funding such a risky journey was a difficult decision. The royal court was already embroiled in other political matters, including the final stages of the Reconquista, and the resources required for Columbus's voyage seemed a significant burden. Despite these reservations, Columbus's persistence and persuasive ability eventually won the royal court's approval. In 1492, after years of negotiations, Columbus was granted the funding and ships needed for his journey. This decision was not made lightly. It was a calculated risk. The Spanish court understood that if Columbus succeeded, the rewards could be immense. New territories, vast wealth from trade, and increased political influence over newly discovered lands. But if he failed, the resources invested would be lost, and the embarrassment of a failed venture would reflect poorly on the monarchy. In contrast to the court's cautious optimism, the explorers and sailors who set out on these expeditions were driven by a much more personal form of ambition. For the sailors, the allure of discovery was tied to the hope of glory, wealth, and new opportunities. Many were looking for the chance to improve their social standing or to secure a place in history. Life aboard the ship was hard and uncertain, but the promise of discovering new lands, of making a name for themselves, outweighed the fears and dangers they faced. The explorer in many ways was as much a product of his time as the mythic maps they followed. Their motivations were shaped by a society that valued adventure and conquest, and they were willing to face immense hardships to achieve those dreams. The royalty, however, saw these same ventures through a different lens. The court's involvement in these expeditions was often more about securing power than seeking adventure. Royalty funded exploration not only for the possibility of wealth, but for the geopolitical leverage it provided. The new lands could become colonies that would enrich the royal treasury and expand the political influence of the monarchy. The explorers and their discoveries were important, but only as long as they served the needs of the state. The courts were concerned with managing the balance between risk and reward, between the ambition of the explorers and the financial, social, and political needs of the kingdom. The contrast between the explorers and the royal courts also extended to their views on the supernatural and the unknown. For the explorers, the edge of the world, the uncharted territories, was a place of opportunity and potential. It was where their greatest challenges and rewards lay. The idea of encountering monsters or dragons was not just a superstitious belief. It was part of the larger narrative of discovery. For them, the mythic maps, with their illustrations of sea monsters and whirlpools, were not mere fantasy, but tangible risks that had to be navigated. These sailors were as much stewards of these legends as they were explorers. They carried the weight of superstition with them, alongside their more practical tools of navigation and trade. The royal courts, on the other hand, were more grounded in reality. While they were undoubtedly aware of the mythical creatures that appeared on maps, their concern was not the supernatural, but the tangible rewards of exploration. They understood that wealth and resources could be found in the new territories, but they were far less concerned with the mythical aspects of exploration. For them, the sea monsters and the edge of the world were curiosities, not real threats. The political and economic benefits of these ventures far outweighed the superstition surrounding them. The tension between the explorers' ambitions and the royal court's cautious pragmatism shaped the course of exploration during the Age of Discovery. Columbus's voyage, though initially viewed as a risky venture, proved to be one of the most significant turning points in world history. The new world he discovered, though not the riches of Asia he had anticipated, opened up vast new territories for exploration and exploitation. The political and economic ramifications were profound, as the Spanish monarchy gained an empire that would last for centuries. In the end, both the explorers and the royal courts were motivated by a mix of ambition and curiosity, but their approaches to the unknown were vastly different. The explorers sought personal glory and the thrill of discovery, while the courts saw exploration as a tool for expanding their power and influence. Together, they forged a path into the unknown, a path that would change the world forever. And though the edge of the world was never truly an edge, but a limitless expanse of ocean, the journey into that unknown was as much about the courage to face the darkness as it was about the discovery of new lands. The clash of these contrasting motivations, personal ambition and political pragmatism, set the stage for the Age of Exploration, a time when the world seemed as though it might indeed fall off into nothingness, yet, through exploration, it became more connected than ever before. As we conclude our journey into the past, reflecting on the bravery, fear, and ambition that drove explorers to sail toward the unknown, we are reminded of the way myths, uncertainties, and the thrill of discovery shaped their voyages. Columbus's expedition, while fraught with doubts and fears, led to the discovery of a new world, one that would forever alter the course of history. And as sailors ventured farther into uncharted waters, propelled by a mix of myth and ambition, they faced not only the vastness of the ocean, but the very real fear of what lay beyond the horizon. Today, the edge of the world no longer holds the same fear or mystery, but the spirit of exploration remains alive in us all. As we explore new frontiers, whether in technology, science, or even within ourselves, we are still driven by the same curiosity and courage that once propelled sailors into the unknown. The lessons of those who sailed toward the edge of the world, facing both the vastness of the ocean and their own fears, remind us that even in the face of uncertainty, discovery is possible. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that the unknown is not something to fear, but something to embrace. Whether it's a journey across the sea or through the vast expanse of your own mind, the spirit of exploration and discovery continues to guide us forward. The world may not have an edge, but the journey to find what lies beyond it continues to unfold one step at a time.